Well, I am really excited about today's presentation because I've seen Gabby present before, and I've talked with her a lot, and she's just super creative about different things that she's done. So, if you have any questions, you can interrupt her or you can put something in the chat. Gabby, if you want me to, I'll monitor the chat so you don't have to worry about that. You can just present, and if there's a question, I'll interrupt you if you want me to do that.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, I'm passing the ball to Gabby.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Gabby and I teach down in St. George. I'm in Washington County School District and I am one of the DTNL learning coaches for our district. And this is the first year our district has had this position. So I've learned a lot this year and I'm really excited to kind of share with you a little bit of what we've put together for our younger kids. And then please, like Melanie said, if you have any questions, just ask. I'm more than happy to be very transparent with you guys. And just a little bit about me. I taught second and fourth grade. I finished last year teaching in fourth grade at Crimson View Elementary School. I have 4 kids and one on the way, and I'm done. So that's kind of exciting to know that I'm done having children. And my husband just found out yesterday that he got a new job. So things are just kind of crazy for our family right now, but super fun. So I'm going to just go ahead and share my screen with you guys and my presentation. Can you guys see that now?
I can see it.
Okay. All right, perfect. Okay, so the title of today's webinar is Kinder First Login Solutions and Digital Citizenship. And so before I kind of show you what we've done, I want to tell a little background. When I was in Springdale, which is the town that Zion National Park is in, I was giving a training and the kindergarten teacher was like, Gabby, this is really hard stuff for me. And they have 60 students in their whole building. So they're very small. It's a they have one kindergarten class and there's about 16 kids. A lot of them come knowing absolutely nothing. So getting them to log into a Chromebook is like the last thing that she even wants to think about having her kids do. And so while we were talking about how to overcome this challenge, we came up with this idea. So I don't take credit for this at all, just kind of helping solve a problem. But what we did is we took the keyboard, and this keyboard is what a Chromebook keyboard looks like. So you'll notice that they're in lowercase letters, whereas a desktop computer typically has uppercase letters. So you could change it depending on the device that the students are using. But what we did is we introduced this on a blank sheet of paper, and we had the students really just start to understand what a keyboard was. And then we related it back to the alphabet letters. And we started identifying, where's the A, where's the B? We went in order. And we did this lesson of identifying the letters on the keyboard in her class. We tried to see how it would work. And so we used little beans, and they would put the bean on the letter and so on and so forth. And the reason why we did it like this was because we wanted the students to understand that, yes, letters make words, letters make sounds, but then we wanted to make sure that they understood that on the keyboard, there is a place that letter is at all the time. And even if they don't necessarily recognize the letter name and sound, they could start creating a memory in their mind of where those letters are at on the keyboard, which most of them are round devices, whether that's a cell phone with a QWERTY keyboard or a desktop, a computer, whatever that may be. So we handed this out, played a couple games with them, and then we blanked it out. But we made 2 versions. So there's this blank version with the numbers at the top just to reference them. And then we made one that has a few letters on it because we wanted to have the students label those boxes with the letters in the correct order. And how we did that was we had the keyboard up on the board, the original one, and then we just had them start to fill it in. And you'll notice at the very top of the screen, it says name, username, and password. And what the teacher did was she printed off all of the school district username and password were Google domain. So we had their Google email and their password written at the top of their page. And so after we had them fill in this keyboard, either one, depending on the level of the child, we gave them this half sheet of paper. And we had them highlight on the top just the letters and numbers that are in their username. Now, to get them into the Chromebook, they don't need to know where the @ sign is, so we did not include that. However, you could include that if they need to in your school district. So the top part of the keyboard was to just highlight the letters and numbers in their username, and then the bottom was for highlighting their password. Okay. And so what we did was we cut this in half and we put it in there. They had little folders and buckets and stuff, and so they put this there. You could shrink it down if you wanted to make it smaller and tape it on the device or put it right next to where they sit until they start to really get the hang of logging into their devices, because it is a challenge. It's a huge challenge to get these kids in if there's not a QR code to sign in, or if you're not using a system that signs kids in automatically, like with a picture or anything like that. So some of the things that we decided to do was to break it down for the teachers that were struggling and needed some support, was to break it into a unit. And I kind of broke that down for you already. And let's see. And so what we did when I went in to model this is we just repeated it over and over and over again, gave the students, once we felt that they were confident, gave them the Chromebook. And we said, okay, just practice logging in. And that's all we did for about 5 to 10 minutes, was just practice logging in, logging out, logging in, logging out. And they started to learn really quickly that they needed to make sure that they checked before they hit the next button, because they might have had a typo. And that was good. Of course, that's a nuisance at first, because you want them to do it right the first time. But we know that even we also make mistakes when we log in. And so the kids started to realize, okay, I need to check. We also taught them about the little eyeball that's right next to the password that allows it to show the little dots or to show the characters, like the numbers and letters that are in their password. So to make sure that they can double check what they've typed. So some of the games that we suggested you could play if you're using the whole keyboard were bingo, 3 in a row, 2 in a row, find the letters in order, use an ABC chart, black out letters and numbers they don't use in their username and password. So instead of highlighting them, you could just black them out. Whole group suggestions, we went over most of that, talking about using a yellow crayon to highlight the keys instead of just a highlighter. And then on the blank keyboard, the letter, making sure that they really have a point of reference with those numbers up at the top, because some kids would really get lost, just because it is hard to go from one, basically looking up at the board and then writing down Q in that first box and then knowing that W comes next. They might just skip a row and then write S next to the Q instead. So we really kept an eye on their work while this was going on. That did happen quite frequently. We talked about different parts of the keyboard, because obviously we didn't show that on those paper copies. We talked about what the enter button does, what the backspace button does, especially when they do make that mistake, and then how to use the mouse and the trackpad depending on what device the students are on. And the big one we noticed, because this was only the second time the students had got on the devices. And so probably 50% of the students actually started touching the screens, and they weren't touch screen. And so that was something that we had to talk about with those little kids, because a lot of times we are used to touching a screen, and this obviously was not the case. So we talked about the difference between a mouse and a trackpad, and you can really see those fine motor skills also just kind of stand out, the ones that really can do it or not. Then we talked about some of the vocabulary at the beginning. So what a cursor is, You can see right there some of those vocabulary words that we used just to make sure that the kids really knew what those words were. A lot of kids don't really understand what a Chromebook is. They know what a laptop is. And then the kindergarten teacher, when we were debriefing after this lesson, she made sure to say, use the hand that they write with to move on the trackpad. So a lot of the students were using both hands on the trackpad, like they were using both pointer fingers from left and right to move around. Some kids were using their right hand if they were left-handed. And really at the end of the day, we just decided most kids are going to use their dominant hand, but a lot of times those left-handed kids will still use the right hand. So just make sure that what they're using is something that makes them feel comfortable on the device. And then things to remember, that there are other symbols and icons, but we don't need to worry about those because, they are going to ask. What we did after this was she started to just leave the Chromebooks on a small table, and during centers for a few weeks, all they did was practice logging in and logging out. And she said it actually only took her about 3 weeks before she had all of her kids getting in under 5 minutes. And she was so relieved because it was such a challenge all year long and in previous years as well. And if this is something that the kids do in their classroom on Chromebooks, that if they do go to the computer lab, that their letters are going to look different, but that the letters are in the same place. So that's something that those little kids can also start to understand. She also suggested just using the student username cards if your district has those through the learning management system or through PowerSchool or anything like that. And making sure that, because some of the kids, when they would type their username, they would actually type the word username instead of their username. So we learned a lot through this lesson together because of just how literal kids can be sometimes. And so we decided that if we did do the username cards again, we might just leave out the word username and leave out the word password and just put them one on top of the other. And then, of course, be patient. It takes time, and have them keep that paper keyboard until it's mastered. We talked about using incentives at home as well so that the students could be motivated to really get logged in, and considering just kind of keeping that open communication with the parents so that they understand that they do need to know these usernames and passwords because it's what passes through with them all the way till they graduate. So it's not something that they're just going to have to learn again later on. Are there any questions so far? Okay. All right.
This is Melanie. I just had a question about how people can get this presentation. I'm going to make a YouTube video out of this webinar, but could I get a copy of this presentation?
Absolutely.
And I could email it out to people?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually have the real worksheets in a different format, and I can send those over as well.
Okay. That sounds awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Gabby, this is Jody. I just wanted to say I love the presentation, so I appreciate you being willing to share it because I can use it to share with a few other people that I work with. So thank you.
It's sometimes not worth it when the kids don't know their logins because it just takes so much time, and our time is precious in the classroom. And so we really wanted to figure out a way to really help these teachers. And it's been a way for us to really get in. And the feedback we've got from the teachers that have tried this in a way that works for them has been really awesome and almost like a bucket filler for me because I want to help them. I want them to see the benefits of the use of technology when it's done correctly. But we do have to, this is a battle that we're just going to have to face every year. And it'll get easier, but I think just the resources for the younger kids to get logged in are very slim. So this was I feel like this was a breakthrough for our school district just in general once we got this. And now I can say that I've actually done it with kindergartner. And I don't have kindergarten experience except like 8 years ago when I was just helping a classroom. And so it was good for me to see the reality of really what's going on in those kindergarten classrooms and how difficult it can be. So, okay. Any other questions or comments, thoughts? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move on into the second part, and it's only 4:15, so hopefully you guys don't mind if we finish early, right? That's always a good thing. So what we've done is we have made a digital citizenship curriculum team in our district, and with the ISTE standards, we went through and aligned some of those subtopics within the ISTE standards to the grade levels we felt were appropriate to cover. And so I'm going to kind of go through a little bit of that scope and sequence, and that is something that we're willing to share with you guys as well. And I wanted to focus mostly on the younger grades because the digital citizenship part of just teaching the younger kids this type of stuff is sometimes things that they already know, but they don't always know the risks that are involved, and especially the parents. So just starting with preschool, because we do have a rep for a preschool. And these are the things that she talked about were super, super important. So talking about screen time and how maybe you'll notice, like, to a child, okay, you get kind of upset after you've been on the screen for so long. And once you start to get, ornery or irritable, that's when we know you've reached your limit for the day. And as you start to see when that child gets upset, then, you need to put the stop on that. It's definitely something to talk about with parents. I know that my 5-year-old, after about 10 minutes, he's done. So then we talked about being a digital citizen and what that looks like, what some of the actions are that kids would do if they're being a digital citizen, which brings us to the content and contact risk. So that's like if they see a bad picture that makes them feel uncomfortable, what are they going to do? And that is something to talk about with parents because that can be different for different families. Some families might say, click the X and come tell an adult. Another family might say, you know what, walk away, come tell me so that I can see what it was. So that just depends on the family. But most of all, and what we try to teach is really tell a trusted adult that you feel comfortable with talking to about it. And then the contact risk with just strangers. A lot of these kids are playing games online and they're playing with people that they don't always know. And so making sure that we don't give them any personal information. And then internet safety, those safety rules when we're online, making sure that we're going to safe sites. The tech vocabulary. So that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the kindergartners and the vocabulary when dealing with the keyboard. But just, what is Wi-Fi? What is the internet? I mean, my oldest is 13, and sometimes she still struggles when I'm like, Autumn, there is no Wi-Fi in the car, so your phone's not going to work unless we say she can use the 3G. But that is kind of foreign to a lot of these kids because they're so used to having the information at the tips of their fingers. And so talking about a lot of that vocabulary, like Wi-Fi and internet and what a web browser is, apps are, things like that. Clicking the X and knowing those symbols and what those icons mean are super important as well because the X and the dash are different in the browser toolbar so that when you hit the dash or that bar, that means it's minimized and really showing them what that looks like. And then the password protection, which is for the younger kids, knowing that it's okay that their parents know their password, that their teachers probably in the classroom setting have access to that school password, but that they don't need to be telling their friends or their neighbors. And if they write it down, that it needs to be in a special spot that isn't going to be seen by other people. things like that. So we talk about those things with the preschool kids. And then here's our scope and sequence. So you've got, this is broken down into a couple of different slides because it's just a screenshot. You can see up at the top, you've got the pre-K and then K through 12. The blue X's represent when that topic is taught, which is on the left-hand side. So for screen time, we decided to address it in pre-K through third grade and then address it again once in intermediate school because that's 6th and 7th grade for us. And then again in middle school, which is 8th and 9th. And then again in high school, which is 10, 11, 12. And you'll kind of see that pattern interchange between the grade levels throughout this scope and sequence. But you'll see you've got digital co-creator, digital footprint. We decided to do every other year. The co-creator, you can see that we didn't address it until third grade. And this is something that is definitely a work in progress. So if we find in the next 5 years that digital co-creator needs to be brought down into first grade, of course we would do that. And then what we've done with our team, with our digital citizenship team, is they've created lessons that align to this scope and sequence. So I'm just going to take fourth grade, for example, and what they did is for digital footprints in fourth grade is the rep made 2 lessons per topic. So we asked that they create 18 total lessons within the scope and sequence. And they needed to cover the topics that were in blue on their column. And we gave them certain requirements. They were pretty simple because we wanted it to be the same across all the grade levels. And what we did is we created the Google Slide template for them and then shared that with all of them. And what they did is made a copy every time that they were going to create a new slideshow, and then created the content, which included just, I think, 3 things, if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head, was a video with a consider and respond questions that were appropriate to the grade level, and then a real world scenario. So sometimes that was just a couple of questions, or sometimes it was a story that they had to answer questions for. Sometimes it was another video, things like that. And then we had them make a pledge. And in the upper grades, we encouraged them to think of their own pledge because they were older and could think of what things they needed to work on themselves. But then in the younger grades, it was like, I pledge to, tell a trusted adult if I feel uncomfortable. I pledge to click the X when a pop-up comes up, things like that. So then with the ISTE standards in the light blue, you'll see like digital access, digital etiquette, and digital law. Those are all under the respect category from ISTE. So then we go to the next one, that's the educate category from ISTE, which includes communication, literacy, and commerce. And again, if you look at digital literacy, we encourage them all to cover computational thinking, content creation, and critical thinking in all of the grades. We did that because you can really cater to those categories on a level that's appropriate for all of the kids. Then if you go back up to digital communication, you've got community participation that doesn't really start until 5th grade. And we felt that was the case because a lot of these kids, they're not 13 yet to where they're on social media legally. And so if you teach it when they're the year that they're turning 11 and 12, you're preparing them for a way that's getting them ready to, in a way, communicate digitally with people in the community. And that could be email, it could be social media, it could be YouTube, whatever it is. But that's why we chose to push that off until 5th grade. And then again, obviously shown throughout the rest of the grade levels. Another one we covered throughout the whole grade level was online communication, because in essence, they could be using Google Hangouts in the classroom. They could be using Marco Polo at home with their family. They could, any type of app that's communicating with family and friends. So we decided to cover that one as well in all of them. And then another one we pushed off to learn more about is digital entrepreneurship, because again, that goes back to a lot of social media, and it goes back to how they can start a business and how they can use technology to help them with their businesses. And then the last part is protect. And then you've got the rights and responsibilities, safety and security, and health and wellness. Now, these subtopics, again, they're just ideas. If one of the digital citizenship teachers had an idea that fit in a category, but it didn't fit a subcategory, then of course we said, yeah, if you think that that's grade level appropriate for your students, go for it. Because if a teacher thinks that that's good for second grade, another teacher in second grade is probably going to agree. And so we've got, you can see in the digital health and wellness, it's pretty heavy with those topics in the majority of the grades. So that concludes the slideshow, the Google slide. But a few last minute things on digital citizenship were just that the teachers that created these lessons were really excited to finish and start to see them being used across the district. We're not the biggest district by any means, but we're fairly large. We have 28 elementary schools. And so my feedback from the elementary teachers has been, when are we getting these lessons? When are they going to be shared out? And then to see them being used in the classroom, and then to hear the positivity coming from them. I was struggling with my kids doing this, and now I have a lesson that I can teach them and feel comfortable getting up and teaching the lesson. And the nice thing with these Google Slides is that we tried to keep it under 20 minutes, especially in the younger grades, but across all the grades, really something that the teacher, if they have little knowledge and information about the topic, that they can just open it up and teach the lesson and know that the questions are right there on the slide, and really have discussions with their students using any kind of teaching strategy to get them to really discuss the topic. And then after their Google Slides, they also created a Google form for each lesson. And in the Google form are screenshots of their slides. And then it's basically, if they were absent, what they could look at if they were done, or if they were caught doing something inappropriate or needed a friendly reminder of what to do, that's the right thing to do, a teacher could say, I just shared with you the Google form, please run through it, and then I need your parents to sign this, and then bring it back so that they know that we've worked on this and this has been, an intervention for them on this certain topic. So we created those because we felt that every school has a digital response to intervention plan. And so to have a resource for them when something does come up, to be prepared to have a teaching moment for those students that might need it. So that's it, you guys. That's my presentation. It only took 30 minutes, but I'm sure everyone's okay with that. But I'd be happy to answer any questions if you need.
I love that. I really appreciate two things, that you're clever enough to figure out a lot of things, and that you're generous enough to take your time to tell us all about this.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Jody, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
I forgot that I knew you.
It's okay, no problem.
How are you going to use this? Because you work with a lot of early elementary teachers, don't you?
Yes, I do. One thing I'm going to do is I work with, we have people who lab assistants, and I would like to help them. The teacher isn't always there, and there are lab people who work in the lab that I'm going to have them practice, do some things like at the beginning for a few minutes before they start whatever they're working on in the lab.
That sounds cool. Anyone else, Wendy or Sarah, do you have thoughts about what you're going to do with it? It's okay if you don't.
Yeah, we have our first graders logging into Canvas for a reading fluency program, and so it's been challenging getting our first graders logged in because it's taking up our time, all the time that we have for them to be reading, just getting them logged in. And so that's why it's important for us to figure out a way for next year that they can, log in quickly without, wasting our time.
Yeah, that's really frustrating in the beginning, trying to get those skills.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Gabby's a liar or anything, but when she says they can do this in 2 weeks, that's really cool.
Yeah, and the teacher was really motivated to get him on because she kind of this is her last year teaching too. She's been teaching kindergarten for 33 years. Bless her heart. She actually taught my husband. How funny is that? And she said she's going to go out with a bang and she's going to do all the hard things. And she wants to prove to people that these kids can do it. And I loved her attitude. So, and I mean, this is a veteran teacher we're talking about. And she really pushed her kids. She really had them put the work in on their end. They were practicing in their centers. And, it is hard because when you suggest these things to teachers, what do we hear a lot of times is, well, that means I have to give something up. And yes, you'll have to give something up, but it will help you in the long run. And you're not going to give that one thing up forever. Because if you started this at the beginning of the year, hopefully, if you start by September, they would be getting the hang of it by October. And then you're not having to do this as a center all the time, but maybe just throw it in occasionally and have that incentive in place for the kiddos so that if they do log in, then they pass it off to you and they get, a sticker. Kids will do anything for a sticker or a starburst,
I love that. And you'd be super popular with the teacher of the grade just above you as well.
Yes, yes, you're so right. Because those kids would come in so much more prepared and ready to get logged in. And the
Yeah.
kids are really proud of themselves. That's the other thing I didn't hit. They really are excited when they can do a hard thing like that because they see people log in all the time. They see the teacher logging in all the time to their accounts, and it's a cool thing to them. We might not think it's that cool, but they think it's cool. And so for them to unlock a Chromebook, so to speak, that's exciting for them. And so once they get the hang of it, they really are really proud that they can do something like that.
That's so sweet. I have Jody's email address. I don't have Sarah's. If you want to put it in the chat, I can email you. I saw that Gabby just shared with me her presentation. Sarah, if you want to do that, if you want to send me your email address, I can do that for you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, Gabby, I understand that your school district is going to share these lessons with people in the state. Do you know when that will be happening?
We're hoping by the end of the school year, if not the end of the school year, by August. So my boss is Tony Campbell, and he's kind of the decision maker in that department. So currently we are so my other person, like my other half, he is over secondary. And right now we're both meeting in the middle and vetting any of the stuff that's been created so far. And so the lessons are done. We're just going through and kind of filtering out or making any edits that we see need to be made, things like that. So I think they'll for sure be done by August. but in the email I just sent Melanie, I did share that scope and sequence with you guys. So you'll have access to that.
Okay. And also, Gabby, do you know how your district is going to share it with others? Do you have a list that you are compiling, or you're going to send it out through C-Forum or some?
Yeah, it would probably, I'm assuming it would be sent through C-Forum.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. And they're all in Google Forms. So the Google Forms and Google Slides. So anyone can use them.
That is wonderful, Gabby, and that is so kind that you will share all that hard work.
Yeah. Got to work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
It's the Washington way. So that's really cool. I love that you guys do that. Any other thoughts before we say goodbye to Gabby? Sarah shook her head to mean no. Still muted, but she communicated silently. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much. It was nice to meet you, Sarah. Nice to see you again, Jody. And thank you so much, Gabby.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. We'll see y'all later.